the April 5th agenda here. And we don't have to go in this order, but Lan, I do have you right at the front, and I'm quite excited to see this API being added, because I think it can be built upon to get some interesting stats and metrics. And then we have Renfei. And then I would like us to just open up this plan, because I'd like to reflect what different people are looking at in the kind of 2Q plan. It's not a commitment that says you must finish things in a certain time. It's more just so everyone knows where everyone's at, so that we don't end up duplicating effort or missing out on stuff. So I'm actually going to stop sharing now and hand it over to Lan. We're here on Wednesday, April 5th, AQAvit meeting, and Lan's kindly offered to talk a bit about some recent work she did. Go ahead.
Share my screen. Can you guys see it?
Yep, we can.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the new API that we added in TISS. So start with the motivation is because we want, in our test pipeline, we have different stages. Each stage representing different actions that we do. So for example, in this issue here that we have queue, setup, build, test, and post. Queue meaning how long we wait for the machine. Setup is preparing the work environment, and then test is executing the test, and post basically is archive everything. So of course you see different tests will have different stages as well. And so the motivation for this issue, basically, we want to gather in the information in the test pipeline to know, are we, in terms of the efficiency, like, are we, like in this particular example, the queue time is way too long, wait for an hour and 23 minutes to actually land on the machine. So does that indicate that we didn't schedule our job efficiently? Is there any room that we can improve? For example, if the test execution time is way too long, then should we do more parallelization so that we can run in parallel on more machines to reduce overall throughput of a pipeline so that we can be released faster? So that's basically the reason behind it. And how we did it is basically we added the API. This is the first step to basically get the build stage. So we build up a structure of how to call Jenkins API. Traditionally, what we do is we have call Jenkins through a node module that provides us some abilities or features to get the console output, to get additional parameters, additional information. But in this structure that we set up, basically we directly calling Jenkins API without using the third-party node module. This allowed us to be more flexible in the future in terms of calling anything we want. This can evolve into, calling, in addition to Jenkins API, it can be, Azure DevOps that can also use this structure. So this is a basic structure, but as an example, what I did is to get the build status. So what we need to provide, maybe I should show it from the comment here. So it's the URL, so the Jenkins URL, the build name that you want to, in this case is grinder, and the build number. And then it will calling the Jenkins API in this case and return us detailed information about all the stages that we have in this particular job. So you can see here that we have different queue stage, we have setup stage, we have setup parallel environment, and actually running the parallel test. So there's a different stage and then different durations, start time, all that. So this is the initial step for this. What we want to do moving forward is that instead of using this as a live API, we actually want to store the information into the database. So next time when we look into this, we know how long it takes, and we can reorganize the information, sort the information to see, oh, in this build, which build has the longest execution time, which build has the longest queue time. And then we can, decipher those information and make our pipeline more efficient. I don't think Adoptium TRSS has been updated with this change. I also can show this with the local change that I have. So it's exactly the same thing. I'm just querying a different build. It basically showing the same similar information based on the stages that we set up in the pipeline. That's it for this feature. Any questions?
Yeah, no, I like this a lot. And definitely for queue time, we can also make decisions about whether we need more nodes of a certain platform and that kind of thing. I think it's going to be tremendous once we're able to do that kind of analysis. Yeah, you were right. We did not pick up this change because our Friday sync job failed to work. And I might be related to the Jenkins upgrade. So I need to.
Yeah, I was gonna spend some time to look into, I'm gonna create a job that be able to run some simple commands in.
Oh yeah.
In that machine and see, it looks like a permission issue. So
yeah. So always something, but yeah, this is excellent. Thank you so much, Lan, for the doing it. And it also relates to one of the Google Summer of Code projects that we have proposed. And just as a note, I know I don't have it on the current agenda for today's call, but yesterday was the deadline for candidates to submit their proposals for doing work on the 2 different projects we have. And tomorrow the mentors will get together and start looking at some of those submissions. We don't have to make any decisions until April 27th, I believe, but we'll start to take a look at what people are proposing to do. And yeah, this is the Optimize Eclipse Adoptium pipelines work. And there's an additional one under AQAvit around measuring the effectiveness of tests. So hoping that we'll see some interesting proposals, and certainly having these metrics in TRSS are going to be helpful. Yeah, I think possibly for both projects if we go forward with both. Right. Alrighty, cool, awesome. And we have also Renfei on the call. Renfei, would you be willing to say a few words and tell us about the recent feature that you have added to TKG?
Sure, I will share my screen.
Thanks, yeah.
Yes, so can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a test case that in CRIU that we need to detect the OS version, and for current requirements, we need to detect a Rail Ubuntu and the SLUS version and the OS name. So we want to be able to run the test based on some labels, for example, the Rail 8 Plus. So the test will only be running on these specific machines. And so I added the change in TKG. What it does is I also added the test case for this feature, so we can take a look at the test case. So we will be able to know how we can use this feature. So by looking at this playlist of XML file, we still have the exact same platform requirements like we did before. But now for certain OS version and platform, for example, the Ubuntu and the other two machines, other two platform I mentioned, we can say os.linux and .ubuntu.20 plus. That means the test only runs on Ubuntu 20 plus. We can also specify a specific version to be able to run the test. We can also use the platform requirements list, such as these two. So that means the test will be run on either Ubuntu 20 plus or the RHEL 8 plus. So yeah, so this feature for now is designed for the CRIU, but it can be also used for the other test cases if needed in the future. And we'll be able to add more support for the platforms as the overall structure is there. So it will be very easy to add other platforms if needed in the future. So yeah, that is for my feature in TKG. Is there any questions?
Yeah. So in the this is great, by the way, again, and I see you have the comma separated list inside of platform requirements. And do I recall we used to also support some not like our regular expression-y bits within this field?
Yeah. So yeah, if we add a hat over here, that means don't run on this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So that we didn't lose that ability
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Yeah, I can. There is a OpenJDK test case or test target that this might apply to, where we're currently seeing that it's not working on RHEL 8, but seems to work elsewhere. It could be another example of temporarily working around that problem without having to exclude it on all the other types of platforms. So it might allow us to do some kind of more granular exclusion stuff, although I probably won't still, because if we put bury exclusions in platform requirements lists, we have to have a way to find them again to re-include them. But
Yeah.
this is fantastic. Yeah. Do people have questions for Renfei on this one? I know TKG has been hit with lots of additional feature requirements. And I guess we should thank CRIU for some of them, but you're right. I think this is useful beyond that one feature, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks. All right. I was going to move on to I'll share my screen again just so we can take a look at that plan. And also, if people we still have 15 minutes. So if we get a quick look also at the backlog of PRs, it might be useful because we don't get a chance to meet up too often over these topics. It might be useful for us to additionally look at this list. So if you don't mind and you can bear with me, I wouldn't mind to go here briefly to see if there are things that can be moved forward or should be closed. I do note that one of them is mine that I have reviews on, but I haven't rebased. So I'll try to do that this week. For some of these, I also note we've left folks hanging. So this is the Alibaba request to add a benchmark, but to have it be running inside of a Docker container, which is an interesting, I think, a theme I'm seeing now from different groups. We see it with some of the installers tests and also, yeah, the SSL test, where folks that are kind of newer to the project are trying to use the external group of tests as a way to run performance tests and installer tests, because and even functional tests, because it gives them more control over the node or the platform that they would run on, so they can install things that aren't present currently on our test nodes. So there's kind of two approaches that could happen, or maybe more. One could be that we request that if it's a small addition to a requirement on a machine, that we actually update an Ansible playbook and get it installed on machines. And two might be that we start incorporating more container-based tests outside of the external group. And I think that's going to end up being the direction we go in for some of these types of tests. But I just wanted to mention that because I know all of you, I think CRU is currently in the external group, and that's all container-based. But as we start to see more and more pressure to get more container-based testing, I think we'll probably end up having to evolve how we're doing that. And recently, with the change that came in to support RISC-V dynamic or running in containers on instead of needing hardware for it, so that came in last week. We've actually used the same code in our Jenkins file base Groovy script that looks to see if there's any real hardware, and if there is, it'll send a job there, but if there isn't, it'll spin up a container. So I think we have multiple ways where we can support container-based testing, but I guess I better hustle to document those ways and make sure we're not trying to create new pathways to do it. We'll organize it so that there's a better pattern that people can follow. On through here, I think we've got a few. This one, I was wondering if Lan or someone can speak about this one. Lan or Mesbah, maybe. Is this still on hold, and I don't have visibility on any of this, so I don't know if this is something that is still parked or if it should be closed. So if you've been participating in some of these reviews, and some of these, are they draft? Oh no, this is open. So this one probably requires some reviewing. That one must have just shifted out. Yes. Okay. Yesterday. Okay, good. So you haven't been waiting long there, Renfei. That's good. So the big ask will be, can we get help from people to review some of these things that are in the backlog? And I don't know if we're in the same position with TKG, but I can take a look after. This plan, just for people's awareness, exists. This is for our second quarter. This tab here are all the issues that we've kind of deemed should be looked at in the second quarter of 2023. This tab here restricts it to just the view of the issues in the AQAvit repos. And you'll note that I had been putting open issues that should happen in this 2-week period that we're currently in, that ends on April 9th. So coming up on Sunday, this will be the end of this iteration 1, with the idea that we could close off these items within that period. If they can't be closed off, then we're going to move them forward to the next iteration. But what I'd like to have here would be, if you're working on an open AQAvit issue in any one of these repositories, if you could actually tag it for the 2Q plan. So how this works, just for awareness, would be, if I actually added another issue into the 2Q plan. Like we wanted to do this issue. Right now, it's not in a project plan. But we might add it to the 2Q plan. And then we might say, well, it needs to be done, so status to do. And it can't get done this week, but maybe someone can be assigned it and it could get done next week. So that's kind of how we're doing project management at the moment. Obviously, if this doesn't have an assignee, oh, Lan's already assigned herself. So maybe that's something that is possible within this 2-week period. And if that's not the case, I think all of you or most of you have permissions to be able to change this around so that then it gets reflected over here and we see it great in iteration 2. It has an owner and it has a status. And so for things that are in here that don't have owners, for people who are wanting to look for work at the project, I'm really happy to have people find things that don't have owners in this list. And even if it's in the no iteration section, go to the issue, put a comment in the issue, because then you can be assigned to that issue. So for example, I believe Shriti was looking at taking this, and since she has put a note there, we'll be able to assign that one to her. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure people were aware of that, and that if you're actively working on stuff, that's how it'll be nice to see it here, because then we know what's happening and we know maybe that we should prioritize reviews for PRs that relate to these issues. Yeah.